Abe Lincoln was not the first Lincoln whose ghost was seen at the White House. His son Willie, who died in the White House while Abe Lincoln was president, was seen by some of the White House staff during President U.S. Grant's term of office. All this talk of dead presidents and ghosts in the White House is very, very sad. Let's cheer things up a little. I call this the story of the three mummies. Many of us have heard the story of Tutankhamun. He was once the teenage boy ruler of ancient Egypt. He was the son-in-law of the pharaoh Ahkna, one of the most remarkable of all the leaders of ancient Cairo. Tutankhamun was by all accounts a charismatic young leader, and all Egypt mourned his death at the age of 18 in the middle of the 14th century BC. Tutankhamun was married at the age of 12 to Akhenaten's eldest daughter. 6 years later, he would be dead. 33 centuries later, he would again show signs of life. Ahkna had a violent family disagreement with one of his daughters. The pharaoh ordered her death, and after she had been killed, one of her hands was severed and buried in a secret place. The reason for this was to deny access to eternity to his wayward daughter. It was believed only those whose bodies remained intact could have eternal life. In the 1890s, a science apprentice who called himself Count Louis Haman was living in Luxor. He met a sheikh who was dying of malaria. Count Haman was able to cure the sheikh. The sheikh gave the count his most precious gift. It turned out to be the mummified hand of an ancient Egyptian princess. The gift fascinated the count. He was aware of the powers that passed through the centuries from ancient rituals and curses. He also knew wealth beyond imagination could await the person who helped an ancient priestess achieve her paradise. Haman kept the hand as he traveled about seeking more information. In 1922, Haman and his wife were living in England, and they noticed something very strange was happening to the mummified hand. The skin began to soften, and the complexion began to look normal and healthy, and blood was filling the veins in the back of the hand. Haman decided to burn the hand on Halloween of 1922. As he threw the hand into the fire on Halloween evening, a vision appeared at the door. Wearing the robes and the jewelry of an Egyptian princess, there stood the daughter of Akhenaten. Her hand was missing. She jumped into the fire and disappeared. When Haman looked into the fire, the hand was gone. The princess had been reunited with her missing appendage. This could have been enough to convince most of the doubtful that there was a power that slept for centuries, but which could come back to life like a dormant volcano. But this is where the story gets strange. Only 4 days later, on November 4th, 1922, the tomb of Tutankhamun was uncovered. Tutankhamun, you will remember, was the brother-in-law of the fiery princess. The archaeological team which made the discovery consisted of Howard Carter, a well-known Egyptologist who oversaw the digging, and Lord Carnarvon, who paid the bill for the expedition. It was in fact Lord Carnarvon who entered the tomb of Tutankhamun and was the first person to see the fantastic wealth. Howard Carter and others followed him, but it was Lord Carnarvon who violated the sanctity of the tomb. Count Amon heard of the discovery and wrote to Lord Carnarvon, warning him of the ancient curse. The Count told what happened to the centuries-old withered hand that came back to life and reunited with its body. Lord Carnarvon ignored the warning and took the wealth from Tutankhamun's burial site. During the excavation, Lord Carnarvon was bitten by a mosquito. And after several months of agony, he died from the mysterious bite on April 5th, 1923. His brother then committed suicide, and a few months later, his stepmother died from a mysterious insect bite. That might seem like a powerful curse, but friends, there's a more frightening Egyptian mummy story that involves a mummified princess of Amon-Ra. She lived about 1600 BC. She was a well-preserved mummy when she was purchased by Douglas Murray while he was visiting Egypt. Although he had heard of the curse and was warned never to remove the mummy from Egypt, Murray had his acquisition crated up and sent to London, where it would eventually be given to the British Museum. Douglas Murray stayed behind in Egypt while the crate was on its way to Great Britain. He journeyed down the Nile on a hunting expedition. The gun he carried mysteriously discharged and struck Murray, leaving him in agony. The boat was hastily turned around to return to Cairo for medical attention. There suddenly was a strong wind blowing against them where calm waters had been minutes before. It took 10 days to reach Cairo, and by that time gangrene had set in and Murray's arm was amputated. 2 of his companions died on the cruise back to England, and they were buried at sea. 2 Egyptian servants who helped load the mummy crate died within a year. All of the Egyptian art treasures that Murray bought disappeared during the voyage to London. When Murray opened the mummy's crate in London to examine how well it held up during the ocean voyage, he was astonished that it appeared to be in better shape than when he had first seen it. While he was looking at the mummy's face, the mummy's eyes opened and turned to look at him. He immediately knew it was alive and he would suffer the curse if he kept it. He generously gave the mummy to a lady who had had an interest in Egyptian archaeology. The lady lost her fiancé, then her mother fell, breaking her leg, and although she should have quickly recovered, the mother died after 6 months of suffering. The lady's pets then died, and she became ill, and it was obvious she was dying. She called her barrister to make out a will, and her attorney told her to get rid of the mummy immediately. The mummy was then presented to the British Museum, and the lady's health returned to normal. A museum photographer took pictures of the mummy, but the pictures could not be used because the eyes were blurred as if they had been moving rapidly while the picture taking was in progress. The photographer died a few weeks later. An Egyptologist was then put in charge of preparing a display for the mummy. He died. The museum found itself denying reports of a curse on their new, as yet unseen display. The museum placed the mummy in the basement. And that's where the story really gets weird. The British Museum decided to give the mummy away to the New York Museum. They had it loaded onto a ship to be sent to the United States. That ship was the Titanic. The Titanic went down in 1912. with the loss of 1,500 people and one mummy. There are plans to salvage what was on board. Isn't that a great story for Halloween or Mummy's Day?